and welcome back to another episode of Hot on the Case. If this is your first time ever joining us for an investigation, here at Hot on the Case, we talk all things true crime with a focus on the unsolved and unexplained. If mysteries are your thing, please consider following the show, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for being here. This week's investigation is going to be a little bit different, and it's definitely going to be a hard watch. We're discussing a toddler who slowly passed away after being left in his father's car in the Georgia summer heat for over 7 hours. Was the death of 22-month-old Cooper Harris a terrible, tragic accident, or is there something far more sinister at play here? His own father was accused of something so brutal, so unspeakable, purposefully leaving his baby in a hot car so he could live a child-free life. My name is Breanna, and I'm hot on the case.
In a hot car for 4 hours.
5 hours.
For 16 hours.
Really an unspeakable tragedy out here at the shopping mall on Acres Mill Road near Highway.
In many cases, these deaths seem to be the cause of a parent in a morning fog, forgetting a daycare drop, and that their child is still in the car when they park at work.
Investigators say the mom forgot her daughter was in the car while she went to work.
It's a tragedy so unthinkable, it's hard for most people to comprehend. Normal, loving, caring parents forgetting that their child is in the back seat and leaving them to die a terrible death in a hot car. It happens more times than you would think. Over 900 children have perished this way in the United States since the 1990s. On average, 38 children die every single year from this phenomenon now known as forgotten baby syndrome. Good parents, no matter their background, who due to distraction, a break in routine, stress, exhaustion, or a combination of all of the above, forget that their child is in the backseat of their car while they're on the way to work. And in a vast majority of the cases, the mind of these parents create like a false memory that they dropped their child off at daycare. In most of these cases, despite the parents' negligence resulting in the death of their child, the law does have sympathy for them and recognize that in most of these cases, this was just a terrible, terrible mistake. But that's not the case for Justin Ross Harris, who many believe used forgotten baby syndrome as a tactic to get away with murdering his son. Justin Ross Harris, who goes by his middle name, married Leanna Taylor in 2006. Ross worked for police dispatch for many years before changing his career path and taking a job as a web developer for Home Depot. Ross and Leanna always knew they wanted children, and they actually struggled to get pregnant for many years before finding out that they were finally pregnant with Cooper. And after Cooper was born on August 8, 2012, Leanna and Ross really thought they had it all. Leanna said that Ross always wanted a child, he always wanted a son, and he was very excited when she got pregnant. He was a very hands-on father, he was a helpful father, and that he loved being a father. Ross had this morning routine of dropping Cooper off at daycare and then on his way to work, picking up some breakfast, which most of the time consisted of going through the Chick-fil-A drive-thru and then going off to work. And then very occasionally, like once in a blue moon, a couple times a month, Ross would actually change this routine and would grab breakfast with Cooper before taking Cooper to daycare. On the morning of June 18th, 2014, Ross left his home in Marietta, Georgia with 22-month-old Cooper, and that morning he chose the latter of his two typical morning routines. That morning, around 8:50 a.m., the father and son walked into Chick-fil-A, as seen on security footage, so that the father and son could enjoy breakfast together. This is an even bigger break in Ross's routine, since he was always a pick up breakfast through the drive-thru kind of guy. That morning, to so many people that have researched this case, Ross put on a show introducing all the employees to his son Cooper. Ross then put Cooper into his car seat and he pulled out of the fast food parking lot onto the street and approached the traffic light. On any other day after taking Cooper to get breakfast at Chick-fil-A, Ross would make a left at that traffic light to take Cooper to daycare. But on this day, Ross went straight through the light and he drove the 2.5 miles down the road to his work. He parked his car in the parking lot and went into his work with 22-month-old Cooper still strapped into his rear-facing car seat. And it was June in Georgia. It was a very hot day with a high temperature of 92 degrees Fahrenheit or 33.3 degrees Celsius. Ross left work a little after 4 p.m. He got in his car and he started driving to meet some of his coworkers at the nearby movie theater so they could go see 22 Jump Street together. But when Ross was only about a block away from the movie theater, he realized his terrible mistake and pulled into the nearest parking lot. Ross began screaming for help, and someone else in the parking lot called 911.
I'm counting 911. Where's your emergency?
Yeah, can you send an ambulance? The guy pulled in the parking lot and the baby's not breathing. It doesn't look like.
When police arrived, a crowd of people had already formed around little lifeless Cooper's body, who was lying on the ground of the parking lot, and a complete stranger was attempting to give Cooper CPR, and his father was walking around the parking lot on his phone. Cooper was tragically declared dead at the scene and likely had been dead in his father's car for hours. And his father was just not acting right. And of course, there's no right way to react to your child dying, but this was just something that people made note of. And as the officers were trying to get answers from Ross about what happened here, there's a child dead on the ground of the parking lot, Ross gets really aggressive with these officers, and it's a female officer he's like getting in the face of and getting loud and tough with. So Ross actually had to be detained, handcuffed, and put in the back of the police car so they could continue their on-site investigation. There was a camera on the dash recording Ross as he's in this police car, and again, it seems like he's putting on a show. One moment, he's hysterical. The next second, he's calm. And at one point, Ross starts to complain that the handcuffs are too tight and they're hurting him. But that's not even the worst of it. Only a couple minutes after Ross has apparently realized that he's essentially cooked his toddler to death in a hot car, his toddler is right now laying dead in a parking lot with strangers surrounding him. Ross begins to complain that the back of the police car is too hot and he doesn't feel like he's getting enough air. You really can't make this up. And as Ross was being taken to the police station to be officially questioned for Cooper's death, Cooper's mother, Leanna, was leaving work and going to pick up Cooper from daycare. That was their schedule every single day. Ross dropped Cooper off at daycare and Leanna always picked him up. That's how it was every single day. So imagine the shock for Leanna when she goes to daycare to pick up Cooper and hears that he was never dropped off. But Leanna makes a really weird comment when she's told that her son Cooper was never dropped off at daycare. Leanna says to the daycare employees, Ross must have left him in the car. It's very strange that was the first thing she thinks of, that was the first conclusion that she jumped to. When Ross was brought to the police station, he continues his odd behavior of being frantically hysterical one second and then being completely calm the next. And once the officers finally come in to question him because they leave him in that room to kind of sweat it out for a while, Ross tells the officers about what he did that day. And for the most part, it was the same story I told you. He woke up, he put Cooper in the car, they went to Chick-fil-A, they had breakfast, he put Cooper back in the car, and then he drove to work. And at some point, he completely forgot that Cooper was in the backseat of the car. Ross even suggested that Cooper possibly fell asleep on the car ride to his work. So without him making any noise, that's how his father just completely forgot that he was there. So Ross is suggesting here that he put the very much awake Cooper in his car seat, and then on the 3-minute drive to his job from Chick-fil-A, Cooper fell asleep and then he just forgot that he was in there. 3 minutes. That doesn't make any sense. During Ross's lunch break, he went to a restaurant with some of his coworkers, and then they all went to the grocery store Publix together, and then after stopped at Home Depot, where Ross picks up some light bulbs. And afterwards, his coworkers drop him back off at his car. Ross puts the light bulbs in the front seat of his car and somehow doesn't realize that his son is dead in the back seat. And we know that this is what Ross did during his lunch break because the coworkers told us and we have security footage of them doing it. But if it's not already suspicious enough, while Ross is recanting his entire day to the police, he's telling them every single thing he did that day, every single detail. He doesn't mention to the police going to Home Depot, buying light bulbs, getting dropped off back at his car, or putting the light bulbs in his car. They're the only things that Ross doesn't mention. And Ross takes a very long pause during the recanting of his day, right when he should have been stating this detail. Take a look, because it's kind of damning.
So, yeah, day's going good. Lunchtime rolls around. I got some guys that I work with across the street. They came and picked me up. We went to Publix, ate lunch. They took me back and dropped me off. And then I finished the work day, and then we had plans to go to a movie. Me and the two guys on lunch, we had plans to go to a movie at 5 o'clock, which is where I was going.
I mean, it's just weird, isn't it? It's strange. It's weird behavior. And then it gets even more questionable. The father, who has just left his child in a hot car, mentions to the police how he very recently on the news saw a story about parents leaving their kids in hot cars. He talks about another father who accidentally did this and how that father is now a huge advocate for always checking the back seat anytime you park your car. Ross then goes on to tell the police that ever since he saw that news story, he's been doing this. He's been double checking the back seat of his car every single time he parks his car. He's been doing that every single day, except for this day, and that it was his biggest fear to forget his son in a hot car.
I just watched news reports. There was a news report of a guy who did this, just like me. And now he's an advocate for when you park, you turn around and look again. And I've been doing that because the worst fear for me is to leave my son in a hot car.
I mean, what a coincidence. What terrible luck must one have? It's your biggest fear to accidentally leave your child in a hot car. You've seen a recent news story about it. It's been on your mind enough for you to be double checking the backseat of your car every single day. And the one time you don't is the time you experience this fatal phenomenon. To relate ever so slightly, for Christmas, my boyfriend Jacob bought me these gold hoop earrings. They're the first real gold jewelry, the real first nice jewelry I've ever had. And I'm so afraid of losing them that I probably check over 100 times a day to make sure that they're still in my ears. I accidentally fall asleep with them in, and then when I wake up, but I'm not fully awake yet, I'm not even fully conscious yet, I'm grabbing my earlobes to make sure that my earrings are still there and they didn't fall out while I was sleeping. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that if forgetting Cooper in a hot car was Ross Harris's biggest fear, it never would have happened. I've heard of a self-fulfilling prophecy before, but to me this reads as Ross trying to make sure that the police officers knew that forgotten baby syndrome was a thing and that he was a great father who just made this terrible accident like so many other good parents before him. And then there's this really awkward moment in Ross's police interrogation where the officers tell Ross that his wife is going to be at the station soon, so they're going to be putting Ross in a cell and will be charging him with cruelty to a child. And Ross seems so taken back, so shocked that he's being charged with a crime, it never even crossed his mind that he wouldn't be leaving the station that day. I'm going to play the clip for you right now.
Oh, that's okay. I want to talk to your wife. I'm going to have you see back here, so, okay. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to put you in the cell back here. Okay. Then you're going to see back there. Yeah, I know you're not free to leave. Okay. And for everything I'm seeing, you're going to be charged. Okay. Okay. Right now, cruelty to child. Okay. I know it's information. It's information based off that your son was in a hot car all day long. Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Ross, anything you want to add? It was definitely unintentional. Okay. I have no history of child abuse. I have no history of domestic violence. I have no criminal history. I have no record whatsoever. I've worked in a law enforcement environment. I understand their concerns. Absolutely. Absolutely. But I'm a great father. And I have multiple people that would back that up. From daycare to my wife to... Ross, we're not here to judge you. I know. I just got to look at it. Yeah. I understand that there's an incident that happens. Right. You're going to ask me questions so much I have invoked my right to answer. But to leave the child in the car all day long, on purpose though, that's what I would look at cruelty. Well, and and cruelty too, and it doesn't have to be on purpose. To me, cruelty sounds your action like my child. Well, actions that you took today, led up to the death of your child. Absolutely. Okay? But at the same token, it's not like I left that Chick-fil-A and said, no, he's going to be fine in the car. I would never do that. Mm-hmm. I'd never do that. No, and that's not what we're saying. What I'm saying is, by your actions today, that's what cruelty sounds like. And I'm trying to explain to you, by your actions, the actions that you took, by not taking him to daycare, by leaving him in the car, caused his death. I disagree slightly. Okay, but that's... No, why do you disagree? I just rather not talk anymore.
Him asking what information is that based on when they're telling him that he's being charged with cruelty to a child after leaving his child in a hot car, are you dumb? And this is only 2 hours, mind you, after he supposedly has realized that his child suffered a terrible death because of him. And he's trying to defend himself and trying to talk himself out of being charged with his child's death. It's absolutely bizarre. No parent would ever act like that. And even if it was an accident, if your actions caused the death of your child, you would be blaming yourself, not defending yourself, or at least not right away. And somehow his wife's behavior, Cooper's mom, Leanna, is even more bizarre, and the investigators caught on to that really quickly. So we already mentioned that Leanna immediately jumps to the conclusion that Ross must have left Cooper in the car the second she hears that Cooper was missing and that he wasn't at daycare. But after an officer told her that her 22-month-old son was dead, Leanna doesn't show any emotion. It's a very odd reaction. She's just heard that her son is dead, and she only asks the officer where her husband is.
There's gonna be no easy way to tell you this. Your child is deceased.
Where's my husband?
When police spoke with her there, did they say anything of note about her reaction at the scene?
Her reaction at the scene, she didn't show any emotion when they asked her, or actually when they notified her of Cooper's death.
In nearly every case I've ever heard of a child getting hurt or passing away or being kidnapped under one parent's watch, even if it wasn't their fault and it was an accident, the other parent is always furious with them. It's a very common reaction, but when Leanna Harris is brought in to speak with her husband only hours after learning that he left her toddler to die in a hot car, she's oddly calm. She doesn't really show any emotion. She's not angry. She's not sad. She seems only concerned for her husband, Ross. She's comforting Ross and kind of cuddling him like he's a baby. She even asks him if he said too much.
My life is over. Not over, baby. Not over. Did you say too much?
Detectives wondered what she meant. They came back into the room and told Ross he wasn't going home.
And she asks him if he thinks that they will have more children.
Can I ask you a weird question?
Yeah.
Do you think we'll have more kids?
Yeah, absolutely. I won't have kids. I don't want just because we lost one child as a kid.
I really don't want to judge a mother, okay? But what mother, only hours after hearing that her only child is dead, is asking about having more children or even worried about that or thinking about that at all? I mean, there's a longer grieving period for people after they lose a pet before they even think about getting another one. Regardless of Leanna's behavior, she has never been considered a person of interest in her son Cooper's death. Although a lot of people do speculate that she was involved, that her behavior is just way too strange, but only one of two things can be possible here. Either Leanna was involved and had prior knowledge of what was going to happen, or she's proof that sometimes weird behavior is just that, weird behavior. And of course, Ross does continue to show more weird behavior. He continues to say some really weird things. His child has just died, and he starts crying and screaming, "Why me? Why did this happen to me? My life is over. Why me?" He tells the mother of his now dead child, "All I can think about is that jail cell, that there's gonna be an uncomfortable cot for me to sleep in, and I'm gonna have to use the bathroom on a metal toilet." He tells Cooper's mom that Cooper looked peaceful and that he was dreading that he was going to look terrible, which implies like he already knew that he was going to be dead. I don't know. That was really weird wording, if that's not what he meant. During Ross's interrogation, the police ask him for the passcode on his phone, and he tells them that he doesn't know the passcode on his own phone because for whatever reason, he doesn't want to give the officers access to his cell phone. And the possible reason for that could be that Ross was cheating on his wife, Leanna. Ross was in contact, flirting, texting, and sexting with about 30 different people, dozens of which he was meeting up with in person to hook up with and have sex with. And on the day his son Cooper died, Ross Harris was texting and sexting with 9 people, which included a prostitute and a 16-year-old girl. And he was doing this, texting and sexting 9 people while he was at breakfast with his son and while his son was dying in his car. But there was also some information on Ross's phone that kind of made him look innocent. At the time, Ross and his wife were planning to go on a cruise, and the day Cooper died, while Cooper was in his car, the hot car, Ross at work was using his phone to search things on child passports, how to get a child passport, and the cost of a child passport. One could argue that he was doing this to make himself look innocent, but if that was the case, why would he not be willing to give the police his phone? On Ross's phone, he was also an active user of an app called Whisper. And if you're unfamiliar with the app, it was an app that was really popular when I was in high school. I don't even know if it's still an app anymore, if it's still a thing, if people use it. But pretty much it's an app where you can anonymously reveal your deepest, darkest secrets. And at Chick-fil-A that morning, 15 minutes before he left his son in a hot car, Ross commented on a post on the Whisper app about someone that regretted getting married and having children. And Ross commented, "I love my son and all, but we both need escapes." For a father to claim that he loves his son and then 15 minutes later leave him in a hot car, it's unthinkable. You would really need to hate someone to essentially burn them to death in a hot car. A car in 92-degree Fahrenheit weather would be like leaving someone in an oven. And if you don't want to take my word for it, here's a clip of a doctor explaining what happens to a pet if they're left in a hot car.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ernie Ward. You know how veterinarians are always telling you never leave your pet in a parked car? It gets really hot. This is a typical summer's day. So I thought I would put myself in a parked car and let's see just how hot it gets. Come on. And I'm now in the car. I've got all 4 windows cracked down about 1 inch. So let's start a timer and let's see exactly how hot it gets in here. The thermometer is reading at right about 94 degrees, 95 degrees. So it's pretty hot in here, but we're just getting started. I'm at 5 minutes in. It is unbelievably hot in here. We're nearing 100 degrees already, and I can tell you that it is stifling in here. Even with all 4 windows cracked, there's no breeze at all. And 10 minutes in, I'll tell you, it is almost unbearable. At this point, the temperature is about 106 degrees, 25 minutes. It's now, oh gosh, what is it? 113 degrees. It's awful. The only thought that's going through my head right now is I want out of the car. You know, it's just everything in my body is saying, get out, get out, get out. I mean, this kills, and it's a lousy way to die. Okay, made it, 30 minutes. 30 minutes in a parked car with the windows cracked. The temperature right now is about 115, 116, really hot. What I really wanted to set out to do was see how it felt to be left in a parked car if I were a dog. And I know what's going on. I'm in control of the situation. What I can't imagine is how helpless and frightening it would be for a dog to be left in a car not knowing when you're going to come and slowly but surely having the energy and the life just burnt out of them by this heat.
That clip I just played you is really important for multiple reasons. One, of course, it really shows you how terrible of a death this is. But maybe even more importantly, that was a video that Ross Harris watched on his computer 5 days before he left his son in a hot car. It's terrible. It really is. Is it possible that Ross really did just leave his son in a hot car on accident? Maybe he was just really distracted because he was too busy cheating on his wife with 30 people, including prostitutes and underage children. Ross's wife, Leanna, after hearing of the infidelity, did divorce Ross right before his trial began. And when Ross's trial began, the prosecution's theory was Ross was a man who was trying to find this escape that he was so desperate for, that he hated his life, he hated his wife, he hated being married, and that he thought the only way out of his marriage was to get rid of his son. But it's very important to note, not a single person could ever be found to testify that Ross was a bad dad. They never were able to find anyone that could testify that Ross didn't love his son. Everyone who got on the stand testified that Ross loved Cooper, that he loved being a dad. Even the dozens of women that he was sleeping with and cheating on his wife with testified that Ross hated being married, but he loved being a dad. Even Ross's ex-wife Leanna, who has just found out that her husband cheated on her with dozens of people, testified under oath that Ross ruined her life, but he definitely did not kill her son on purpose. Ultimately, Ross was found guilty on all charges, which included the murder of his child Cooper Harris and lewd acts with a minor, and he was sentenced to life in prison plus 32 years. And this was a very controversial case for many years. Was there enough evidence that Ross killed his son and was guilty of murder beyond a reasonable doubt? On June 22nd, 2022, the Georgia Supreme Court overturned Ross's murder conviction due to them not believing that him cheating on his wife should have been mentioned during his trial, as it was not relevant. Originally, it was believed that Ross would be getting a new trial, one where his infidelity would not be mentioned, but about a year later, in May 2023, it was ruled that Ross would not be retried for the murder of his son, Cooper Harris. And then in June 2024, so really not that long ago, Ross was released from the prison system and booked into the Cobb County Jail to serve the remaining 2 years of his sentence for his sex crimes against an underage person. It's really hard for me to wrap my head around a father who seemed to everyone in his life to really, really love his son with his whole heart, to kill his son in such a brutal, torturous way, just so he could sleep around and cheat on his wife. You would need to be a seriously evil person to do that. But on this podcast, it's my goal to always find out what is the most likely answer. And as awful as it sounds, I do think that the most likely answer is that Ross Harris purposefully left his son Cooper in that car. But I'm really interested to get your opinions, your thoughts and theories on this case. Was this a terrible, tragic accident, a cold-blooded murder? Did Cooper's mom have involvement, and if so, what was her motive? So definitely leave me all your thoughts in the comments below, because I really do read every single one that comes in, and I'm definitely interested to get your guys' thoughts on this one. I feel like it could be pretty split. I think there could be a really interesting discussion in the comment section below. And while you're there, please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow the show wherever you're listening. But that's all I have for this week's investigation, and I will see you guys all next week when we are hot on the case once again.